Chaleureusement bienvenue, mesdames et messieurs. Warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Swedish Film Institute seminar with a focus on human rights. Yes, this is about human rights. Gender equality was made part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the UN General Assembly on December 10th, 1948. So we had some time already to work on this, didn't we? We have acknowledged women's rights, yet I'm sad to note that we still have a very long way to go. This is painfully obvious while following the social media feeds from the red carpet here outside Le Palais. Despite all the efforts through the years, through the representation project and the discussions we've been having under the hashtag #AskHerMore. As long as one half of humanity is valued from appearance and not from talents and achievements as the other half, we will not have balance. We will not be able to be successful. Gender equality has its own intrinsic value, but it's also an essential tool for economic prosperity. Societies that value women and men as equal are safer and healthier societies. Companies with a gender-balanced management are more profitable than those more male-dominated. The film industry is no exception. Well, yes, the film industry is an exception in that it has a unique opportunity to expose the audience to a wide range of perspectives, narratives, contradicting stereotypes, stories that have the potential to decrease our implicit, often unconscious biases, and thus decrease or totally eliminate gender inequalities. Stories that appeal to a wider audience by catering for the perspectives of all of humanity, not just half. However, it is not merely in content representation that the film industry has opportunities to act. There are many inequalities to be addressed, ranging from the low share of female directors to funders not giving women equal financial opportunities, as we will see later on. Insight and sense of urgency is always a starting point for any change. We at the Swedish Film Institute are proud to work actively towards equal rights and opportunities for men and women, girls and boys, no matter if it's behind or in front of the camera. One way of doing so is compiling data on the state of the film industry through the gender lens. I sincerely hope that this year's report will bring new knowledge, facts that you can all choose to act upon. It is my conviction that we will not emerge successful from this transition phase that the industry is going through if we do not use all the talents, the creativity, the courage of all humanity, not only a portion of it. I wish you good luck in these endeavors. It is my true honor to introduce to you the Swedish Minister for Foreign Trade and Nordic Affairs, Ms. Anna Hallberg.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for allowing me to open this afternoon session. Well, of course, equality is a human right and a high priority for the Swedish government. Gender equality, we all know, gives men and women equal opportunities for gainful employment and therefore also enables increased participation in a democratic society. And active efforts to promote diversity, which in turn broadens the talent supply and subsequently, of course, benefits the creative sector, it's not only necessary, it's also very smart, also from an economic perspective, of course. And diversity still has an unrealized potential in the film industry, in Sweden and internationally, both qualitatively and commercially. Different conditions for male and female filmmakers risk resulting in missed new perspectives and missed new stories. We must continue to discuss why men and women face such different conditions and which changes are really needed to do here and now. And by making structures visible, we can work together and to change many industries, but not at least the film industry. The Swedish Film Institute, which is known for its equality efforts, continues to strengthen gender equality in the film industry. And Sweden is, and we want to really be a pioneer to inspire others to create gender equality initiatives in their countries. This report from the Swedish Film Institute shows that there are considerable gender-based differences that affect which films are made. And despite many improvements, of course, during the last couple of years, we all know that there's a significant underrepresentation when it comes to female film producers, for instance. In addition, men are also allowed much bigger film budgets compared to women. And when it comes to strengthening women's and girls' rights, the film industry can really act as a role model by providing equal pay and allowing gender equal influence. Because films also affect society and have a powerful role in society. And the issue of representation in the film industry, it's really about supporting everyone's right to culture, both as practitioners but also, of course, as spectators. The Swedish cultural policy objectives state that culture should be a dynamic, challenging and independent force based on freedom of expression, that everyone should be able to participate in cultural life, and that creativity, diversity and artistic quality should be integral parts of the society's development. It might sound like quite obvious for many of us, but it's not indeed obvious in many countries around the world. So we need to fight for these equal opportunities. Swedish films, even though I'm a Swedish minister, I must although say that are high quality, and that should also show, of course, enough breadth and diversity of storytelling, and that they speak to everyone in society. And as Minister for Foreign Trade and for Nordic Affairs, in a feminist government, of course, making economic development available to both men and women is absolutely crucial. And increased gender equality and diversity are also competitive advantages. So I'm so convinced that this applies to the film industry as well to all industries. So I wish you good luck with today's discussions, and I'm really grateful for being here and talking about this very important subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the Minister for being here. We know that your time is short, so unfortunately she has to leave us now. I wanted to welcome to the stage Josefin, who's the head of analytics at the Swedish Film Institute and who has prepared the report that we're launching today.
Thank you, Petra. So, I'm Josefin, and I'm going to present some of the main results of our latest report, 406 Days It's About Time. No, it's not. This is not working. So, here it is. But first, before showing you some of the results, some background. The Swedish Film Institute has long been working for gender equality in the film industry, and part of this work is the starting principle that gender equality and diversity should define the area of film. And this report is part of our ongoing gender equality endeavor that aims to increase knowledge and to highlight areas that require particular attention. And the focus of this year's report is the time aspect in making of a film. and the report is based on quantitative analysis of our own data. So, to the main results. Our first finding is that there is a great time difference. It takes considerably longer for fiction films with female screenwriters and directors to be made. It actually takes 406 days longer for fiction films with female screenwriters to be completed compared to film projects with male screenwriters. And this, of course, influences the composition of films that are released every year and contributes to the unequal gender distribution. Our second finding is that it's the opposite for documentaries. For documentary film, it takes longer for films with male filmmakers to be finished compared to female. It turns out that there's a clear connection between the time it takes to produce a documentary film and its total budget. In other words, the longer time for documentary films with male filmmakers to be completed could be explained by the fact that these projects are often bigger production that requires both more money and more time to complete. Our third finding is that women drop off along the way. The application statistics indicate that there are far more men than women applying for new film projects. And this applies both for fiction film and documentary film. For documentary film, however, the initial imbalance evens out during the process, while it largely remains for fiction film. And looking at the process as a whole, it's clear that women drop off to a greater extent than men for fiction film. It is noteworthy, though, that films with female filmmaker drop off later in the process. On the one hand, this could be interpreted as women filmmakers being given greater opportunity to explore and develop their film ideas, but it could also mean that they are tied longer than men to film projects that do not ultimately result in a film being made. So, to conclude, this report focuses on time as one aspect of inequality, and we will not be able to change the range of films on offer without being aware of how the time factor has an impact. And one aspect that should be highlighted is that female filmmakers are longer in the phase of film production that is extra vulnerable, namely the development phase. And one possible explanation to this is that it's harder for films with female filmmakers to find financing, which we have seen in our previously reports also. So it's all about the money. And there is research in the fields of venture capital and academia that points to these structural inequalities between women and men when it comes to financing, access to financing, as we also see in the film industry. And this report shows that there are great differences in the process of filmmaking between male and female filmmakers, and this puts us at risk of losing new perspectives and new narratives. So these were our three main findings of the report, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me after the seminar. And you can also download the full report on our website. This was just some highlights. It contains so much more. And we also have some copies outside the room that you can take after the seminar. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Josefin. My name is Petra. I'll be the moderator for the panel with our outstanding panelists. Please welcome to the stage Helen Granqvist, President of Women in Film International and Women in Film Sweden. Heather Rabbits, the chair of Time's Up UK, and Helge Albers, the CEO of the Film Fund for Hamburg and okay, I'll take center stage. So, as I think most of you know, the Swedish Film Institute has had a focus on gender equality for several years, and we've also been doing, I've been a consultant, so they've been doing events at Cannes and in Berlin about the various kind of stages that we've been in, and the three panelists outside of the Swedish Film Institute have also been for many years working, fighting, doing everything that you guys can to achieve equality, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So whilst the report has given us an idea of where we are today, we now want to focus on where we're going. So I wanted to start with you, Heather. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Interesting process just trying to get in here, so I'm trying to get calm.
You
Okay.
all each have your microphone.
Okay.
What are your top priorities for the near future?
Okay. So I chair Time's Up in the UK, and Time's Up was launched in 2018 at the Emmys, the BAFTAs, and indeed the red carpet here. And our focus is tackling harassment, abuse, and bullying in the industry. But aligned to that, and crucially important, is how do we shift culture? How do we ensure that the culture in film and in television is inclusive and is diverse? And that involves really focused interventions. It's about the how do we change culture. So our priorities continue to be the same priorities from our very beginning, and that involves a number of initiatives. I will just give some examples here today. It's about guidance and advice on all productions that there is unacceptable behaviour that will not be tolerated. But it's also about ensuring that more women are slated as directors of film. And so, for example, we worked with Working Title, a very significant film producer in the UK, who have slated 6 women directors out of their 11 films that are due to be produced in the course of this year. We know if we have more women directors, more women of colour directors, we will have more diverse crews. If that happens, you start to shift culture. You start to shift the balance of power. We've also been particularly involved with ensuring that there are intimacy coordinators on all films. We started, it was 1 or 2. It's now become an industry standard. So for us, it's about how do you influence and shape culture. I think the report is really interesting because it shows the inequitable access to finance. That's why it takes women longer to get their films made. And remember that during this time, you are not being paid. So who can withstand that economic pressure? Women of colour in particular, they do not have the same access to those levels of income. So that's about shifting the mindset of the financiers about what they view as risk, and they often see risk aligned with women being at the helm of films. So for us, I think what's really interesting about this report is how do we now focus our attention on changing that mindset in terms of the financiers of the film sector.
Thank you. Helen, I know that you have thoughts. You have 1 more year as the president of Women in Film and Television International.
Yes.
What are you going to do?
You know, but when I came to this room and waiting for this to start, so I suddenly saw a pair of eyes that just looked at me so loving. And I said, wow, who are you? And then she said, I was at your event yesterday, the Women in Film event. We had an event with, I think we had 6 continents there. We shared a lot of experiences. We shared a lot of love. And we share a lot of sisterhood and a lot of belief that we can be part of a change we all need. So when I listen to you, Heather, and I must say I love to listen to Heather Rabat, she's so cool. When you talk about changing culture, what does that mean? And I think, saying to you, Josefin, because I also had the privilege, I'm the international president of WIF, but I'm also the president of Women in Film. Together, I have a co-president here somewhere in the room. And there, Caroline, hi. We had the privilege to be the reference group to this report, and we were a bit naughty to you, but I think that was our role to be that, because when I first heard about this report, I heard it once again that there is problem for women out there. And honestly, I've been in this position for 10 years now in Sweden, and I'm so tired of hearing that is problem for women or for people of color or of people that are different able, etc., etc. Because I know from my traveling all around the world, and I also have the privilege to work as a coach, so I work with a lot of projects, I know that the stories we want, they are out there. The filmmakers we want, they are out there. The capacity we want is out there. That is not the problem. So when I heard you talk about this, my question is, what do you do wrong who let it take 406 days more for women? And I think that is the right question to ask. And it's not a comfortable question, but you were very kind and open, and we talked about it, how difficult it is. And what I would like to share, I hope that I as an activist can share with people that has another kind of power and privilege, the journey and the awareness that there is a change we all need, and that we can join forces to create this change. Because if we accept it's not good enough as it is, because it's not. There's a lot of work to do, and we all have power to be part of the change. Maybe it feels uncomfortable, but I think that's what it is to be an activist, is to deal with being this person who is uncomfortable. When everyone else has a very good time, you will be the one say, hey, it's not good for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to shuffle a little bit, and maybe Helge, maybe you have thoughts, because you do represent institutional funding.
Correct, yes. So I'm the CEO of a film fund, public film fund based in Germany, in Hamburg, and we basically took on the topic of diversity and inclusion very early on when I started 3 years ago, and tried to look at it from a very holistic position, and just started with ourselves. I think that as an organization, you have to start with yourself and understanding who you are and why you do things the way you do it. So mission statements, understanding who you're there for, who you're communicating to, who you're liable to, who are you, what's the purpose, what's the way you communicate, and so on, was an interestingly long process for an organization that is 40 years old and that has worked in established patterns for a long time. And many of those patterns on a professional level might be right, but the world has changed. So we need to understand the world we are living in now, and even better, the world we are moving towards in the future, because I think we need to talk from a development perspective. And so for us as a public film fund, we look at it from the development of the organization as well as from the development of the region we're working for. And we see tremendous shifts in demographics, in communication, in the way the world works at large. And we need to be true to that, I think, as a fund. So first of all, understanding who we are, and then understanding what does it mean. So how do we react to that? And as an organization, we have 3 different levels of looking at it. One is ourselves. How do we communicate among ourselves? If we do recruiting, how do we reach out to different spheres, different groups of people, underrepresented groups of people, which is not trivial at all. And many other questions that we moved internally. Second question is decision-making level on the project level. How do we assemble the juries we have? Who decides, who looks at projects, who decides about the distribution of money? And third level is in the application process. Who do we address to? Who do we make ourselves visible to? Who understands us as a partner in the process, and that led us to probably the most visible tool, which is the diversity checklist we issued in partnership with the University in Rostock and a couple of other stakeholder groups that helped us developing a very basic, still it's very basic tool to just understand better and help our applicants to understand better the different dimensions of diversity in storytelling and so on. That process has sort of come to an understanding, and now we're learning from all the mistakes that we made along the way. Because that's very much, if you ask me about the next steps, it's learning from all the many mistakes we've made, from all the shortcomings we had, analyzing what hasn't worked, analyzing what the next steps will be. Looking at data is very important, I think. You know, even within the data you presented, I have questions in terms of how does that relate to your previous years? Is that a look on the last year? Has it changed? Has it become better over the past years to 406 days? Was it 500 days beforehand, or was it 200 days? Are we talking about films that are in a higher budget range or in a lower budget range? Because I see a lack of gender equality predominantly in the higher budget ranges. This is where we really have to fight very strongly. Diversity being a representation is a much more severe topic for us in our fund and from our perspective in the higher budget ranges. So we need to get into communication with all the bigger players. That's one of the learnings. And I could continue for a while. So there's really a lot to do, and that's all starting from somewhere. So the bottom line is you have to start somewhere as an organization and then build up onto that. So that's.
Thank you. And speaking of creating more research, Josefin, you have already started, right, on the next annual report?
Yeah, you can say so. I mean, we believe that we have to continue to increase knowledge all the time about different kinds of discrimination, and we need hard facts to be able to change. We are our previous report called Which Women was an interview study looking at working conditions for older women and women of color. And now we are starting to statistically try to measure it so we can see how it looks, and looking at the different layers of discrimination, because we have to have the data and have the facts and show it to everybody to be able to change.
And speaking of creating change, Heather, I know that you're working hard on a new project.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that? Because it's not super simple.
It's not super simple. But can I make a couple of comments before that?
Please do.
Because I think absolutely data and learning is really important. But we know from the festival here that women are underrepresented. We know that our people of colour are underrepresented. I mean, how much data do we need to gather to show that there is an issue? We know there's an issue. We need to continue that work, but we do have to focus on what changes the dial. And I'll tell one small story. There's a chief exec president of FX Channels called John Landgraf, who 5 years ago stood up at Edinburgh Film and Television Festival and said 85% of all of his output was done by white directors, white writers, and he said, I'm ashamed. And in 5 years' time, and in 2022, over 63% of all of their output is now directed by women. It can be done. It is about leadership. It's about accountability. It's about saying, this is where we're going to go, because as Helen said, all of this talent is out there. You just have to open your eyes and find it. So my plea is about leadership, about saying, I will be judged in 5 years' time, if I'm running Cannes Film Festival, about how many of the women directors, people of colour, walk up those steps on the red carpet. That is fundamental. In terms of the initiative that we at Time's Up are working on, we know there is still a huge amount of fear around bullying and harassment. It's also why women drop out the system. It's why people of colour drop out the system, because the culture is not one that is welcoming or conducive, I believe, to the expression of creative talent. And so whilst we've done a huge amount of work, and across all of our partners, we've done a massive amount of work around guidance, around providing advice, helplines and support, we know that many, many people suffer in silence. And so what we have proposed in the UK, and we work very closely with our colleagues in Hollywood, the Hollywood Commission, is to set up a new body, the Independent Standards Authority, where you can go to and say, I've been bullied or I've been harassed, and this is my experience, and we will then put together investigations and hold people to account. Because most people do not complain in the course of the production because they're too frightened of losing their jobs. They don't trust the processes, even though a huge amount of work has been done. If you have an independent body that has the highest standards of confidentiality, linked to it being run by lawyers who specialize in this area, we believe we will bring around change. We've just launched that a few weeks ago, and all of the major broadcasters, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, are all now coming on board, as well as all of the talent agents and the producers. I think that is an intervention which is about accountability. And we in the industry, whatever role we play, I think have to ensure that we stand up and support the integrity of our industry and support people so that they can find the voice for their talent. And that's what we're working on at the moment.
Did you have? No.
No, I'm just waiting for I can definitely comment on it if you
Go
want.
for it.
No, but I think as a WIFT president, I don't know how many calls I have every week or now Zoom meetings with people who have problems that are not of a legal character. They need just to talk to someone, or they just want to know how to navigate in the industry because there are no descriptions, because it's a lot of silent knowledge how you do things, and also these kind of things that you don't dare to complain because you're afraid of being punished. I think if we could professionalize what we talk about around the coffee machines, because it is part of our profession, and culture, just because we work in culture doesn't mean we have a good culture. Culture is something we create every day, and that's why I talk a lot about love, because I think to talk about love, that we take care of each other, because it's already a very heavy work we do in our industry. It's not easy for anyone. It's really what's happening in the world right now. The landscape is changing. We don't know what rules will be tomorrow, and it makes it even harder. And can I continue? Yeah, because what I'm thinking of when we talk about these things, because I'm so proud of being Swedish, actually, connected to the Swedish Film Institute. And I found out, and Anne-Marie, who's sitting there, she was part of the first research for gender equality in 2002, that this work has been going on for many years, means something. And sometimes it can be really heavy to be in it. But what worries me today, so even if we are challenging you working for these institutes, it scares me more if you would disappear. So when we criticize, I think it is because we want to make sure we will still have these public funding bodies, because in this landscape, and I think Hedda wants to add something to it, or yeah?
Well, I just want to endorse that ensuring that there are public funders to support filmmakers is fundamental, and certainly the British Film Institute, we do a huge amount of work to ensure that we try and safeguard that, but we know we're in very challenging economic times.
We are, but then also we need to prove the relevance of these public funding bodies, and the relevance, I think, will be proved that you can reflect the society we are living in. With Helge is thinking, I'm not taking over your role, but I can see that he's thinking.
No, this is all fine. That makes total sense. I just wanted to pick up on Heather's comment and point out that in Germany there's an independent body who deals with sexual harassment, discrimination in the field of theater, film, and music industry, and that's under the umbrella of the German Film Academy and the Ministry of Culture, run by industry bodies. And they started that work like a good 5 years ago, I would say, have really made a lot of impact and really shifted the perception of those fields which weren't really, known but didn't have any presence. And so that's shifted a lot. Just awareness, possibility of speaking anonymously, getting legal advice, being heard, being taken seriously, has shifted a lot.
Yeah.
And these are cases that are, of course, coming back to us also as public funds. We, once we become aware of it, we can't make it unheard. So we have to find a position, we have to take a position. It's really complicated, but also challenging processes that make us grow in the end. Again, also as an organization, because with every complicated case, you grow somehow, you learn. And I just wanted to add that, and for the public funds, relevance. Relevance can be very different things, but specifically, I think when it comes to relevance in terms of diversity and inclusion, development is a key thing, because that's where it all starts. That's where the access into the industry and the way we speak to each other, we work with each other, that's the starting point of everything. So we need to take possibly greater care of looking into development, how we open up development strands, how do we make sure that established filmmakers can work with new filmmakers, that voices are crossing paths and get in a field of vision. So creating a field of vision in general, I think, across a region in our case, is a major task, and a task I quite like to take on actually, because there's a big win in it. That's a good thing. It's good news. There's something to win.
I also wanted to bring up something that Helen, you and Helge. Sure. There's always something fun going on here. You've been a part of ARTEF. Would you, one of you, maybe you, Helen, like to explain what that is? Because that's a really important, I don't know if everybody... All right, Helge will start.
Well,
it's a really important European initiative that hopefully will create a bunch of change in the industry.
I think it will. It's the anti-racist anti-racism task force for European film. It's spearheaded by the European Film Academy and carried by a number of public funding bodies and institutions on European level, and was initiated by, I think, by Matthias Wader-Knoll, who runs the European Film Academy now, and Helen was a big part of it. We supported a little bit. We were happy to help. It's a training initiative that, for us, again, across our members and across our the people who work in our industry, is fundamental to make the idea trickle down and to understand, to put knowledge into a larger organizational body. And the knowledge that was gained from that particular body of ARTEF was quite something. It was very substantial to how we operate and how we find a common understanding, also with different funds and so on. So it was a great initiative. Maybe you want to expand a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to. No, but the background thought was to be very clear.
Just to be clear, it's an anti-racist task force. I want everybody to hear those words.
Anti-racist task force for European film, and the initiative comes from Matthias. You said it right.
You did say it right.
No, but the thought behind it was to dismantle institutional racism, meaning that in the institutions in Europe, there are structures for racism built into the systems. And of course, this is not an easy task, but we have been part of a journey where we went through an education for a year led by Emilia Roig from Center for Intersectional Justice in Berlin. Quite a, what you say, guppy,
it's been a bumpy
ride, but I think what happened to me, I also had a privilege to do another course during last summer. It's called the Zesting course. It was Sour Lemon, an organization in London, and it's about to start to reflect on your own white privilege, which is something that is easy as a white person, that you think, yeah, but I'm not privileged, I'm a woman, and I'm blah, blah, blah. You get into, you're victimized, but if you really start to look at yourself as the privileged person you are, and I think that kind of journey That is what ARTIF is about. And the ambition is very high. We have, in a way, just started with baby steps, but just the facts that it has started. And the ambition is, and there are not set in stone yet, but there are discussions with BFI and the London Film Festival to host some kind of education, I think it's October in the fall, for leaders of institutions in Europe who all happens to be white.
And I think that's a really important point to bring up, even though we're here to talk about the annual gender equality report. It's really important to talk about the fact that nothing exists in isolation. So I think that's why the anti-racist task force, you can't have one without the other, because you won't even reach halfway. We'll only do a part of the work. And
can I say one more thing?
Please do.
I think, but getting into this, but anyway, I think it's so weird that we have our colonial history and we don't talk about it. Isn't that totally weird?
Yes, it is. I mean, that's not weird.
They're
it's
present
a shame,
all the
but it's not weird.
time, and it should actually be something that are discussed in between us at least once a day, I think. Opinion.
Now's the time. Heather, I wanted to ambush you with a question that we haven't prepared. You've done a lot of firsts. You were the first woman on the British or English Football Association. You were the first person of color on that same board. And you've also had other firsts. And you've worked a long time for equality and equity and inclusion in film, in sports, in entertainment. What do you see that the film industry can learn from the other fields that you're active in? Sorry, I did tell you I was ambushing you.
I wouldn't say in any of those fields that we've cracked it. I was one of the first founders of Kick Racism Out of Football 30 years ago in England, and we're still working on it. And I suppose if I was to say anything, it's about sharing the learning. So I think it's really important that we have this European task force and we share what has worked and what hasn't worked. I don't think there is one sector that I could feel has really got there. It is a journey. It's taking a long time. I think my observation is, and I go back to a point I was making earlier, it is about never taking your foot off the gas, never sort of sitting back and think, well, we've made a bit of improvement. It's 5% or it's 10%. It's actually saying that's not enough. We are not there. And it is about, I think, leadership. It's about all of those people who have the power across the sectors, whether you're running a studio, whether you're running a network, whether you're running a broadcast, whether you're running a football club, wherever you are, it's about standing up and being counted about making this change. And I think that's what I've learned. And I've come across some incredible people who really have stayed focused on it, and you can see the difference they make. But it takes the collective effort of the many, of all of us in this room, whatever we do, wherever we go, wherever we talk. It takes all of us to make sure we lean into this task.
And Helge, you've talked, well, when we talked before this, you mentioned the importance of making mistakes, not being afraid to make mistakes. And I think that plays into what Heather just said. We have to keep doing and keep pushing. Do you want to...
Yeah, look, I mean, nobody's happy to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, it's also something, we need to develop a culture of being forgiving about making mistakes, I think. Being accepting for yourself to be in uncomfortable situations, not even about mistakes, but just confronting yourself. Like you said, with ARTIF, happens, the more you are in that field, the more you are confronted with uncomfortable truths. And to a certain extent, A, you have to accept and learn how that feels, and B, to act on it. And so that's a journey. And some people are more open to go into that experience, and others take a little bit more time. So being patient is unfortunately also one of the aspects that once in a while comes into it, which doesn't mean you have to be complacent. So it's as you said before, leadership. So I think as long as the vision is there, and as long as you can explain why you want to go somewhere, why that direction makes sense, then you will also be able to pull through it. At the moment, we are looking at very concrete new models that we feel could help the field, especially incentive programs, especially gender diversity in the lower and in the higher budget fields are a big part of our jobs. So looking into quotas that we as an organization understand and that are also communicable. It's all about communication, basically. I mean, a lot of what we do is about communication, and to find the right communication, the right storytelling behind the things you do is a big part of the job. It's a long journey. It's not very trivial, but that's sort of the way to go about it, I think. And we will make mistakes again. It's not going to go well all the time, and that's part of it. Was also part of the experience we had so far. But you know, hey, it's okay.
No, but I was thinking of when Anna Sana started the work for gender equality at the Film Institute in 2013. Her process was to define, we have a problem. And I think that is the first thing. We have a problem. Doesn't matter who we are and what color we have and what kind of sex we have. We have a problem because it's a common problem. And that's what she did with gender equality. And if we can articulate that loud, all of us, and agree, then you can also set goals. Then you can try to understand what is the small aspects of this problem, and then you can start to work towards creating solutions for this problem. And I don't see that, I'm afraid. I would hear that. I would hear someone with power and privilege, as Matthijs did. I want to hear more, actually I see one. I want to hear more people in that kind of positions articulate, we have a problem. And define it and articulate it, and then decide and ask, do you want to change this?
Yeah. I'm going to make a plea about money, because money is power. It goes back to your report, right? And what's been interesting over these last few years, and I go back to the example of John Landgraf, if you have money, you can reshape the ecosystem. So now, within the BBC or ITV, we at Time's Up, we worked on an initiative that said there will be no white, male-only writing rooms anymore. Now, if you have the money and you stop doing that, that means you will start giving work to women, people of colour, and you will start telling stories, and we have a much broader range of stories across our broadcasters. That's about the power of money. If you're Netflix or you're Amazon or you're Apple and you say you do not get this commission unless your heads of departments behind the screen are diverse, guess what? People are now trying to find editors, sound engineers, cinematographers, and that will pull the talent through the system. So my plea is also about money helps drive change. It's crucial. And if those leaders, as you say, that's what I'm going to stand up, that's how I'm going to be counted, that makes a difference. And if you're a financier of a film and you stop thinking that somebody who's a woman of colour is a risk, and actually this is an opportunity to tell this story and I'm going to finance and back that filmmaker, you will start to influence your other peers. And it does take both single action and collective action to shift that culture. So my plea is for those people who have control to actually make those interventions. And they are doing that, and we need to encourage more of it.
Thank you. I think that a lot of us in this room, we've had these conversations before. Like you mentioned, you've been doing this for 30 years. I'm almost there. We are all impatient, I'd want to say, but I think I want to highlight what you said, keeping our foot on the gas, not letting go. I want to highlight what you said, Helen, about creating that culture that allows us to move forward. What you said, Josefin, about creating that knowledge, although, as you mentioned, we know. We kind of know. And as you said, like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. and influence the culture that you're in, the institutional culture, if in your case, or in other types of cultures. So that's my attempt at summarizing this. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
I would like to encourage, because I think everyone in the industry has power. The industry is not. The industry becomes what we create, and that is really important. You can be the one who takes the first step of creating a culture that are more loving, that are more including, that are more listening, and take care of each other. It's not difficult, it's not rocket science. It's called human rights, isn't that, they talk about that in the beginning? It's being a human.
Yeah.
It's taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And that, even if we are here, and I met a filmmaker on the street. I talked to him many years ago. Now he have made four movies, and I met him on the Scandinavian terrace many years ago, and he said, "Oh, I can't get any money for my films." And then I said, I had told him that time, "Look here, look at all the resources." So he was quoting me today, and I think, look at this world. There are so many resources, and look at you. Look at your power, the power you have, because we are creating this industry. It's not creating us.
So I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the Swedish Film Institute for organizing this. The report is available online on the Swedish Film Institute website, and there are also hard copies if you go into the next room where it says Meet the Speakers. And I think of some of the speakers you can actually meet there, right? No? Yes? Yes? Thanks everybody for being here today.
Oh, and I would just, sorry, I would just say that thank you, Petra, for moderating this so much. And thanks to my fellow panelists as well. Also, please, after the seminar, you can come and join us at the Scandinavian House at the other side of the big street from 5:30 to 6:30. So you're all very welcome there as well. Thank you.